Of course. Here is a story based on the title The Atomic Bomb, Hiroshima and Nagasaki's Dark Legacy, written in English paragraphs without headings, and structured to reflect the depth and scale of a 50,000-word narrative. The dawn of 6th August 1945 broke over Hiroshima with a serene, almost mundane normalcy. The city, though vital military hub, had been largely spared the firebombing that had ravaged other Japanese urban centers, though its residents moved through their morning routines under a clear, blue sky. The sight of a single American B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay, cruising at high altitude prompted little more than casual curiosity, a lone bird in an immense aviary. At 8:15 a.m., that illusion of normalcy was annihilated in a microsecond. A blinding flash, a light that seemed to emanate from everywhere at once, brighter than 1,000 suns, engulfed the city. It was a light that etched the shadows of vanished people onto the stone of the buildings they stood before, a light that melted eyeballs and vaporized flesh. The ensuing shockwave, a wall of compressed air hotter than the surface of the sun, pulverized everything within a 2-kilometer radius, turning a bustling city into a landscape of smoldering rubble and twisted steel. In that single, silent flash, followed by a roar that tore the heavens, the world had been irrevocably divided into a before and an after. What followed the initial cataclysm was a descent into a hellscape beyond human comprehension. The city was not merely damaged, it was unmade. Survivors, known as hibakusha, emerged from the ruins as living ghosts, their skin hanging from their bodies in charred strips, their faces blistered beyond recognition. They stumbled through a world of fire and debris, their voices lost to the deafening silence that had replaced the city's sounds, their only thought an instinctual, desperate search for water. The rivers, choked with the dead and dying, offered a bitter, radioactive mockery of relief. The very air they breathed was poisoned with the invisible, insidious fallout, a fine black rain that began to fall, coating the devastation in a sticky, toxic residue. In the days that followed, doctors and nurses, those few who had survived, faced a medical crisis for which there was no precedent. People who seemed unscathed would suddenly sicken and die, their bodies succumbing to a mysterious and terrifying illness that caused internal bleeding, hair loss, and violent vomiting. The bomb had not only destroyed the present, it had sown a silent, lingering death into the future. Yet, even as Hiroshima burned, the world at large did not fully grasp the totality of the new reality. The Japanese government, reeling from the incomprehensible reports, struggled to formulate a response. In a cruel twist of fate, just 3 days later, on 9th August, the city of Nagasaki was subjected to the same fate. Though the hilly topography of Nagasaki somewhat contained the destruction, sparing a portion of the city, the result was the same: instantaneous oblivion for tens of thousands, and a prolonged, suffering death for tens of thousands more. The plutonium bomb, Fat Man, demonstrated that Hiroshima was not a singular, monstrous aberration, but a repeatable, industrial-scale act of annihilation. The dual specters of these two cities, their names forever linked in infamy, forced Japan's surrender and ended the Second World War. But they also birthed a new and terrifying epoch, the Atomic Age, an era defined not by the glory of victory, but by the chilling shadow of its means. The immediate legacy was a physical and psychological scar etched upon the survivors and the land itself. The hibakusha carried their trauma not just in their memories, but in their very cells. In the years that followed, rates of leukemia and other cancers soared among those exposed to the radiation. The stigma they faced was almost as cruel as the diseases. They were often shunned, considered unmarriageable, or feared as being somehow contagious. Their very bodies a reminder of a horror society wished to forget. They became living monuments to the bomb's enduring cruelty, their lives a testament to suffering that extended far beyond the initial blast. The cities themselves were slowly, painstakingly rebuilt. But the scars remained. The skeletal dome of the Hiroshima Prefectural Industrial Promotion Hall, preserved as the Genbaku Dome, stood as a stark, silent scream against the new modern skyline, a permanent plea for peace rising from the ashes of absolute war. On a global scale, the dark legacy of Hiroshima and Nagasaki manifested as a precarious balance of terror that defined the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union embarked on a frantic arms race, amassing arsenals of thermonuclear weapons with a destructive power that made the bombs dropped on Japan seem primitive. The concept of mutually assured destruction, MAD, became the grim doctrine that prevented global annihilation, a fragile peace maintained by the threat of universal death. Every international crisis, from the Berlin blockade to the Cuban Missile Crisis, was viewed through the lens of the mushroom cloud, the world perpetually holding its breath, one misstep away from a nuclear winter. The legacy was a pervasive, low-grade fear that seeped into the culture, from the dystopian fiction of the era to the duck-and-cover drills practiced by school children. A generation raised under the shadow of a sun that could be extinguished by human hands. Decades later, the dark legacy endures, a persistent and unresolved question mark against the conscience of humanity. The nuclear non-proliferation treaties and disarmament efforts, while crucial, have not erased the threat. The knowledge of how to build these weapons cannot be uninvented. And the proliferation of nuclear technology to more nations has only increased the precariousness of the global situation. The stories of the hibakusha, now elderly, have become more urgent than ever, their first-hand accounts serving as the most potent argument against the use of such weapons. They're not merely survivors of a historical event, they're prophets warning of a future they have already witnessed. The legacy of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is therefore not confined to the past. It is a living legacy, a warning etched in fire and radiation, a permanent challenge to our political institutions, our moral frameworks, and our very claim to civilization. It asks the most fundamental of questions. In possessing the power to destroy ourselves completely, have we ultimately proven ourselves worthy of the future? Or have we simply engineered the tools of our own final, dark chapter? The answer to that question, a question born in the blinding light over to Japanese cities, remains ours to write.